Whitmore. I'm with Human Resource USA. I want to thank you for joining us today on this live stream. Carl?
Hi, Pandy. How are you today?
I am good. I am good. Are you ready to talk about the Family First Coronavirus Response Act?
I am. So I should just take it away? Okay.
Well, let me stress, the purpose of this call was Carl and I are, and Carl's an attorney with Sibley, Shillitoe, and Dyer here in the Dayton, Cincinnati market. We are getting so many questions and inquiries about how this act is going to impact companies and the timing of it, and how do we use all the benefits, how do the employees get the most advantage out of all these benefits. So Carl and I both felt that this was something that really needed to be addressed immediately, but the only way this is going to be really effective for all of us is if you interact as viewers, send in your questions, tell us what is important to you so that we can make this the most relevant information possible. Carl, why don't you start by going over the act and breaking it down for us so that we understand truly what the important parts are and how we should be chronologically thinking about this.
Thanks, Pandy. So the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was signed by President Trump last week, and it is an omnibus bill, which means that it's got a lot of stuff in it, basically. But for businesses and employers in particular, there are two sections of the act that are particularly significant, and we want to probably focus our discussion today on those two sections. And they have names of their own, those two sections. The first section is the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act, which is a mouthful. Basically, that's a expansion amendment of the good old-fashioned Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, but there's some provisions that were passed last week that enhance those benefits on a temporary basis. And then there's the other section we want to talk about today, which also has a name of its own. It's called the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. And that provision is also a separate sort of section of this larger bill. I should mention first, starting out, that both these provisions, both these laws, Emergency Paid Leave Act and Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act, both of them become effective on April 2nd. They start becoming relevant for employers on April 2nd, but it's good to start planning now, because they're going to change some of the ways we respond to the coronavirus situation coming up. The other thing I'll tell you about both those sections is that they're sunsetting. They're actually ending as of the end of the year. So as of December 31st, 2020, theoretically at least, they go away. So they aren't going to be around forever, but they're designed as emergency measures to deal with the pandemic that we're currently facing. So let me start by saying, who's covered by these new laws? Well, both the acts that I just mentioned cover employers of fewer than 500 employees. Now, why does that matter? Because we know the FMLA has covered 50 or more employees forever and a day. This act covers everybody who has fewer than 500 employees. So a lot of the smaller companies, a lot of the smaller businesses that may not be accustomed to having to provide paid leave or having to provide Family and Medical Leave Act benefits will now have to pay attention to these laws, because they may apply in ways that the laws hadn't before. The other thing I want to mention off the bat is that there are differences in which employees might be eligible for these leaves, and we'll talk about what the leaves are in a minute. But Emergency Family and Medical Leave applies to employees with 30 days of calendar who have been with the company for 30 days, and the Emergency Paid Leave applies to all employees effective immediately, regardless of how long they've been with the company. So let's talk about what the leaves are for. I want to start by kind of walking through the Emergency Family Medical Leave, giving a quick overview. Then I'll talk about the Emergency Paid Leave, give you a quick overview, and then I think we'll break for some questions and some further discussion. So first, the Family and Medical Leave Act expansion. So what is the leave for? The leave is available for whenever an employee is unable to work or telework. So that means can't work from home, can't work at your place of business, due to the need to care for a son or daughter who's under the age of 18 for whatever reason, or when the child's school or daycare is closed due to the coronavirus. So if there is a situation relating to this emergency pandemic, either the child is ill or can't go to school because the school is closed, this leave kicks in. What is the leave? What is the leave, paid or unpaid? Well, the first 10 days of this leave is unpaid. Don't have to pay them for that. After that, though, after 10 days, the leave becomes paid leave. And the paid leave is basically a special kind of pay provision, which applies 2/3 of the regular rate. If they pay $10 an hour, it's 2/3 of that. And it's capped out at $200 a day and $10,000 for the duration of the leave. Once you meet those caps, the rest of the 12 weeks under the FMLA would be unpaid. So again, there is pay, no pay for the first 10 days, capped pay for the next period of time until those caps are met, and then the balance of the 12-week period, is unpaid. Who pays for that? Well, the employers pay for that leave, and there are going to be some tax credits available to defray the cost of that leave. But those are some of the essentials of that piece of legislation. Anyway, so now let's turn to the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. This is a little bit of a different animal. As I said, this applies to all employers with fewer than 500 employees as well. But all employees are covered effective immediately. So whether you've worked for a day or whether you've worked for 20 years, you're covered by this act. When is the employee entitled to paid emergency paid sick leave? Well, an employee qualifies for this leave whenever the employee cannot work or telework. So obviously can't work in either place for whatever reason because of a number of different things. And there's a whole list of potential reasons for leave, but some of the key ones are, for example, if an employee is subject to a quarantine or isolation order. So if you have a stay-at-home order and you can't come to work and you can't work at home because of whatever, you're entitled to potentially emergency paid leave. If you've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, you've been exposed, maybe not symptomatic yet, but you've been exposed, you have to stay home because of that, you may be entitled to this emergency paid leave. You're experiencing symptoms already, or you are seeking a medical diagnosis because you've experienced symptoms. You're entitled to leave under those circumstances as well. And there are a number of other related reasons. If you're taking care of somebody who's experienced one or more of those conditions, then you may also be entitled to leave. This one works a little differently. It is compensated. Full-time employees are eligible for up to 80 hours of paid leave, essentially 2 weeks, full 40-hour weeks. Part-time employees are eligible for paid leave for the number of days they worked on average over the prior 2-week period. So if they worked an average of 20 hours for the previous 2 weeks, they're entitled to 20 hours of emergency paid leave, sick leave under this provision. There are also caps to compensation as well. And the caps are a little different. But again, the employer pays for this leave. The employer is going to pay for the leave, and they will be eligible potentially for some tax credits to defray the cost of that leave as well. So those are the essential pieces of both of these provisions. Now, there are lots more to talk about, I imagine, but I just wanted to give you kind of an overview so we have a basis, a starting point for our discussion. Go ahead, Pandy.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing from my clients is I kind of want to back over and kind of give you some of the questions and concerns that I've been addressing. First, thank you for making the emphasis that this does not start till April 2nd. So many calls that I'm getting are, well, you know, she wants to stay home and stay with her kids, so which do I put first? The paid sick leave, or do I put the FMLA and extension? And then, of course, the first question is, well, you don't do anything until April 2nd. So our message today is, if you have anyone who needs to be at home for any reason, PTO, vacation, sick time that the company offers as a company benefit is the only thing you have as an option right now as an employer. Carl, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary, Pandy. So keep in mind that there may be other provisions. You may have policies in place. You may have
Right.
a PTO policy. You may have a vacation policy. You may have personal leave. You may have other paid leaves in your policy handbook that already exist and are already in place. The other thing we should mention about these laws is that they do not permit you to change those in anticipation of
Good
having
point.
to comply with the rules,
Good
right?
point.
So if you've got PTO, you still have to allow your employees to use that PTO under certain circumstances. And in many cases, you can't require them to take that PTO concurrently. You may have to allow them the choice. Do I take PTO or do I take emergency paid sick leave? That choice must be allowed to them. But it's designed to give the employee the choice, the maximum flexibility to utilize whatever existing leaves are available under company policy and or the additional benefits provided by these laws in some form or fashion.
After April 2nd, yes.
After April 2nd, that's correct, yeah.
I also want to just reiterate, and please add anything you can on this one, Carl, but a lot of my clients are forgetting that ADA has not gone away. So that is still an active protocol that we have to follow if you have 15 or more employees and your employee themselves need an accommodation, which in many times is just to work from home. I got a call this afternoon of an accounting firm that does not want to allow any of their workers to work from home. And he's pretty much telling them they have to work there in the office, though VPM is available. And, you know, again, if one of those individuals get ill with over 15 employees, he has to kick ADA in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the idea, one of the advantages we have in responding to coronavirus right now is that, 20 years ago, it wasn't possible for a lot of us to be able to, we wouldn't be doing a live stream right now. We wouldn't be able to accomplish much of what we're doing now remotely. The technology is a wonderful tool, keeps us safe, allows us to continue to be productive. Seems to me we ought to encourage that. But the law, I think, also recognizes that because we now have these options, we have to potentially use them. And in cases where you have disability accommodations, you said, Pandy, those rules still apply. None of that has changed. So there may be a reason why, legal reason why you should consider telecommuting. But quite apart from that, I think it's just a smart, good business strategy. People are going to be at home. If they have to be at home for any reason, but they can still work, why not allow them to telecommute? And even in situations where you're not sure, maybe it's best to have folks stay at home and work while they're there. So I think it's just a good strategy overall.
I thank you. And then the other thing that has come up a number of times, and my clients would do this instinctively because I'm so into documentation, but in this act, there was no formal documentation recommended or even offered in regards to recording the extension of the FMLA. And I'm still recommending to them that and I've got one that I create to document that so that we've got it recorded that they requested the extension on the FMLA. They fit the criteria. And again, the extension does not include any ailment or illness of themselves. It is of the criteria that you mentioned. So if they qualify, we should still document it. And we should also have it documented that they elected or did not elect to use their own personal PTO.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's play that scenario out. Let's see what that sounds like. I've got an employee who comes to me and says, my child's child care facility closed down and I don't have anybody to take care of my children. I need to be home for that purpose. And I'm not going to be able to work. I'm not going to be able to work remotely because I've got to be physically there for the kids and watching them and taking care of them. And so I need leave. And the employer has the right to request verification of that. Now, it may be obvious, if you've heard that your school district, for example, is closed down, you may not need to have somebody from the school district send you a letter to prove that. It's a question of reasonability too, but there may be situations where you need verification. It's appropriate, I think, still to ask the employee to provide that verification and within a reasonable time. And I think, there are no forms, there are no documents ready to do the standard FMLA forms, as you mentioned, Pandy, don't cover this new module, this new type of leave, FMLA leave. So you got to kind of be a little flexible with that, but I think it's reasonable to provide or request to provide information. And if you're at home to take care of a child who's ill for some reason,
Yeah.
you can still request medical authorization and medical verification of that. That's certainly still part of the FMLA and should apply in situations like this as well.
Good, good. Chris is asking, what about time off between now and April 2nd if we need to take time off? Are there any protections?
Well, the protections don't really begin until April 2nd when the leave under these provisions is invoked. But the first thing you should do is probably look to company policy and procedure that may be already in place. You may have PTO, you may have sick leave. There may be leaves that you can already utilize under company policy that would provide you the kind of protection you're looking for. There may be other protections depending on your circumstances. It's hard to generalize that, but as Pandy, as you know, there may be ADA issues, or there may be other leave issues that might kick in even before this new law is effective. So there's no general answer to that question, but I would look to the leaves first. Look to your company policy handbook first. Look to the policies and procedures your company has in place first as a first stop.
Mm-hmm. We've also been hearing a number of companies that say, look, I don't want to lay any of my employees off. What other options do I have? And between you and me, Carl, I've been recommending that they reduce hours if they can, once they've determined and assessed what expertise and competencies are required to maintain the needs of the business at this time, in this crazy time, reduce hours. But the consequences with that can be very, very serious. And it's interesting when I mention that, they go, oh, great. All right, that's fine. We'll just put them on unemployment for the next couple of weeks. And then when the paid sick time and the FMLA extension kicks in April 2nd, we'll just put them on that. So we really need to put the distinction that once you put somebody on unemployment, they're on unemployment. They're off your payroll as active, and they will not be eligible for any of these plans under the FFCRA.
And even more so, any benefits they receive under the new laws would be offset against some of the employment compensation benefits. So theoretically, it'd be a zero-sum game anyway, even assuming that were possible. But you're right, yeah. Pandy. I mean, the assumption behind unemployment compensation is that you've basically furloughed somebody, you've sent them home, you've either terminated them outright or they've lost work for whatever reason. I suppose theoretically you could maybe bring them back and then put them on leave. You rehire them or recall them or something. I mean, there would be some probably gymnastics you'd have to go through to do that. But it seems if you're gonna furlough somebody, or if you're gonna want to comply with these laws, if these laws are of value and an option for you to, as an employer, to use, then you don't want to let the people go. You want to put them on leave when the leave becomes available. Unemployment comp's a different animal. It's a different set of issues and complications. So I would treat that as a different problem.
Yeah, good. I've also been recommending, because a lot of individuals have been asking about that portion that's paid on the extension of the FMLA. 2/3 pay up to $200 per day. I've made the recommendation on a couple of them to say, look, if they've got PTO left, if they haven't exhausted their PTO and you need to supplement, because $200 a day, that's going to really hurt a lot of people. Your highly compensated people are not going to be able to live on $200 a day as if they were, actually working. What other recommendations would you have with that, or is that about all we have as an option?
Well, I think employers can always enhance the benefits that the law otherwise requires them to provide. Employers can always supplement. They can always do more than the law requires as a fundamental principle. We know that, and I think the maybe $200 a day isn't enough, but if they can afford to do it, sure. Now you cannot require an employer, you cannot require an employee to take existing PTO time. So in the example of an FMLA expansion type leave, if somebody that first 10 days is unpaid, you can't require them to run their PTO time concurrently, but they do have the option of doing that. So you have to give them the choice. The employee can choose to do that and take the PTO as a bridge to the next stage. The next 10 days after that, of course, becomes paid up to a limit. And then the employer could theoretically supplement that $200 a day with other benefits if they choose to do that. But again, in your situation where that may not always be possible, particularly for smaller companies and those who haven't been used to complying with these kinds of rules before, that kind of monetary supplementation might not always be an option either.
Yeah, we got another question that came in of an individual that says, look, I'm working full time. Can my employer legally reduce my hours down to 20 hours a week? Unfortunately,
sure.
They can.
Sure.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
They can. Now, I'm telling my clients, look, partial unemployment's available to those individuals. Mm-hmm. The catch then is, though, Carl, and just reassure me that this is correct. Once April 2nd kicks in, and if they qualify for the paid sick leave, they will be getting their full 40 hours a week.
Well,
or would they be reduced to the 20?
Well, they qualify for emergency paid sick leave. Yeah, they'd be getting paid, but they'd be getting, again, subject to certain caps in the new law as well. So, yeah. For example, if for certain types of leave, it's $511 a day and up to a little over $5,100 total. So there's still some caps on the emergency paid sick leave benefits. The caps are lower for other types of leave. It just depends. It's a very complicated set of rules, but there are caps in place. So again, they're going to be receiving some benefit under those laws, but it's probably not going to be for a lot of people full pay. So they're going to have to take that into consideration. If they have PTO time, maybe they want to take that. Maybe they want to utilize that at full pay for a period of time, and maybe by the end of that PTO time, their need for leave has gone away, and they can return to work. It's up to the employee to some degree to make that choice. But again, employers have to be free with that. They have to allow them and advise them accordingly that they have those options. It's going to be up to the employers to some degree to make that information available and the choices and options available to their employees. Pandy, have you seen a lot of employers in your work reducing hours as opposed to furloughing people, or have you seen more people being furloughed now? We're about a week into this emergency now, so I'm curious what your experience has been. It's
been the industry. Obviously, my daycares. I've had daycares actually close 100%. And it's interesting, a lot of companies are doing everything they possibly can to justify that they are essential functions, that they have essential workers. So it's interesting. I would have never thought that would happen, but literally companies are going, oh, no, but I provide supplies for this, or I provide the support for that. And they want to stay employed. But the smart ones are reevaluating what their operations are, and they're reevaluating their staff. And it's amazing how many conversations we've had in saying, I'm not real sure why we're doing things this way. And if I have to lay somebody off, it's going to be actually better for the company because we're making it more efficient, or we're making things a little bit more streamlined. And of course, when business picks up, then maybe they'll rethink it again. But it's 50-50 for us. I mean, for my guys, it's 50-50, and that's actually a relief because, again, you and I both remember what 2009 was, and that was hard on everybody watching the number of RIFs that occurred during that time. So I'm very glad that we're at a smaller amount now. And then, there's a lot of people actually that are stepping forward and saying, look, I'll take the time off. I'd rather be home with my kids and not be so stressed out. So it's making it easier for the employers to make decisions too.
Do you have some suggestions for employers who are thinking about reducing staff or furloughing people, but they're not going to do it all at once? So you may have 30 or 40 employees. You're going to be reducing staff gradually over a period of time, but there's going to be certain people, certain core key individuals who may have to be left in the workplace, or you may want to hold back and continue to have employed for a period. So the question, I guess, really comes down to, how do you select those people for furlough? Are there suggestions, are there recommendations that you would give to employers who are contemplating a sort of a gradual phase out of employment?
I absolutely start with what are the needs of your business. I mean, you have to know what competencies and skill sets you need to operate your business. And what that does, Carl, in many cases, and I had a group that we were on a Go Meeting conference yesterday. There were 5 of us in the meeting. And I pushed back and said, look, how many people have you promoted or moved from department to department? How many people have multiple skills who might be more valuable because we can move them from this department over to that department? Or we can use that cross training to get maybe 3 or 4 functions done. And it backed them up. And one of the owners, got with me afterwards and said, you know what, you're right. We were thinking about letting go of 2, 3 people in this department because we've got too many bodies, hands in that department. And yet we were going to keep newer employees over in another department when actually this older experience, this history, we need to just reallocate. So yeah, they really need to slow down. I mean, last in, first out, everybody knows that rule. And I think most business owners are sophisticated enough to know that they can't discriminate. So they've got to be very, very careful about hand picking. This is not the time to be focused on, well, I always wanted to get rid of that person anyways, because retaliation will be blatant at that point. But if they stay true to their culture, they remember that morale is important, because all this is going to go away. I mean, we're just talking a couple weeks. Just let's get through the next couple of months. And truly stay focused on the needs of the business. They should be okay. I'm highly recommending that they get two sets of eyes on everything. So if they make a list of people that they don't think they necessarily need, put those in front of an attorney, put them in front of a consultant, put that list in front of somebody and do your defense speech, because you don't want to none of the business owners want to make a mistake like that now.
Right. Dan asks a question here. I'll just read it here. Employers under 50 employees may be given a hardship exemption. And he's asking whether we have any guidance on what qualifies the company under 50 employees for an exemption. That's a great question, Dan.
We wish we could.
The hardship exemption is going to be a little hard to apply, because we don't yet really have any we don't have any rules yet on how that hardship exemption is going to impact or is going to be applied. But the bottom line is it's up to the employer to demonstrate that the business will be, by compliance with these leave laws, the business will be jeopardized as a going concern. Presumably that means you'll go out of business, or there's a significant risk that you go out of business. Now, what constitutes, jeopardizing the business as a going concern, whether it could be something less than a complete existential crisis, is a little uncertain. We know that the Department of Labor, the law empowers the Department of Labor to issue regulations and rules on what this all means and how the procedure will be set up to actually apply for this exemption. None of that we know yet. None of those rules yet exist. And between you and me, it's a pretty good chance, I feel, and I hope I'm wrong, but there might be a pretty good chance that these rules are probably not even going to be in place until the law goes away. So, it takes a while for that to happen. And I think the best we can do right now is suggest that if you have a financial crisis and that your business will be literally at the threshold of closing because you have to make these payments, that's probably good enough. But again, short of that, we don't know. Stay tuned. Hopefully, soon we'll get some more guidance on that. But that's the best I can do right now. Pandy, do you have any other thoughts on that?
None whatsoever. I've got a whole list of companies that are waiting for that application to come out. And I'm with you. I think it's going to be way too late. They're going to have to just bite the bullet and deal with what they can right now.
Okay. There's another question I don't know the answer to, so I'll pass this to you. Hopefully you can help Lisa. Lisa asks, can you share what you know about shared work via unemployment? If this was asked, I apologize. It was not asked. And I'm not familiar with shared work as a term of art. Do you know what she might be referring to there, Pandy?
I don't. I'm assuming that she's referring to some kind of a government program. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if it's just flex working, I mean, that's one thing, but I don't know why that would be compared to unemployment. If it's, again, reducing hours and pulling your team back to the most efficient ways of functioning, and yeah, just trying to keep people on the roster or on payroll, I applaud that. I completely applaud that. I told somebody the other day, look, you can pay somebody for anything. If you've got the resources and the funds in the company to pay an employee to sit down and watch safety tapes, or to wash windows, or to just call your clients and give them an easy soft touch, or to shred, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the title of the employee is. It doesn't matter what you trained them or what you hired them to do. You can pay them to do anything that's legal and ethical and safe in this time of transition. And that's all this is just a transition time.
Right.
I do want to, I had several questions come through. Individuals wanting to say, well, my employees are scared. They're afraid. They don't want to be here because they're afraid they're going to catch it either here in the workplace or for somebody else in the workplace. They just want to go home. They can't work from home because they're hourly employees. That's the other major catch. Can I just pay them? And that's why I come back and say, you're the employer. You can pay them for calling you up and singing to you every morning. You can pay them anything you want when you want, but just understand that, you can't start them on the programs of the FFCRA until April 2nd, and be very careful when you start paying people for fear and being afraid of something that you might be able to talk through and prevent.
Mm-hmm. There's another question. I'll try to help a little bit on this. I'm not a tax expert, but Victoria asks, could you please talk about how employers will get the payroll tax credit? Will the tax liability be reduced for every pay run for larger companies? That's probably a question better left to your accountant or your tax attorney. I'm not a tax expert. I do know that there will be refundable tax credits equal to 100% of the qualified paid sick leave wages paid by employers, and 100% of the qualified family leave wages paid by an employer for each calendar quarter. So there will be 100% refundable tax credits for that. You will also be able to claim credits to offset your obligation for certain portions of the Social Security taxes and for the employer portion of the hospital insurance piece. Qualified sick leave wages are going to be part of that. So you really need to sit down with your tax preparer, your tax accountant, and walk through those rules. It's probably not something I'm going to be able to help with, and probably not online here.
That's a really good point, Carl. I'm gonna kind of tag off on that one. At this time, during all these activities, I would highly recommend, and I suggest to all business owners or GMs or such, this is a time when you need to be partnering with your brokers and talking to your brokers with the insurance companies. I mean, look, if you start reducing hours on employees, they may be losing their eligibility for those benefit plans. And I just did a podcast this morning on the repercussions and the consequences of reducing hours. All sorts of things change. That plan description is etched in stone. The carrier has certain expectations. I'm thrilled to hear that a number of carriers are now determining that they're going to postpone premiums for a couple of years. I got calls on that this morning. So you need to be talking to your broker. Are your premiums going to be suspended for a couple of months? If you reduce the hours, is there going to be a grace period so that you can do that for this short period of time and the individuals will not lose their benefits? Remember, if they do go from full-time to part-time, your plan may say that they don't get a certain amount of employer contribution, and they may end up having to pay more on the premium. Well, if their hours are being reduced, their payroll's being reduced, they may not have the money to pay for that difference in the premium. So you need to be talking to your broker to find out what implications could be within the insurance company. I also would highly recommend that you get with your 401k advisor. The individuals that have simple IRAs, get with your planners, your financial people who have these plans. Some 401ks have hardship loans. You need to know if that's possible for your employees, because it may be a situation, especially if someone does get really ill and is out for a long period of time. These programs of FFCRA are not going to help with the medical bills or with the other consequences that might come with that being off of work for a long time. Also be talking to your short-term disability providers. Make sure that they're aware and that you know the plan constraints and perimeters of short-term disability, because again, as Carl and I said, ADA does not go away, your other benefits kick in, and normally an ancillary like a short-term disability is going to be available to all employees. Maybe not, maybe it's a paid employee voluntary benefit, and you need to know who has that available and how to get them on that if by some odd chance they acquire the virus and need assistance. This is a lot. We understand this is a lot, and that's why Carl and I want to make ourselves available to help you kind of think through stuff that maybe hasn't crossed your mind yet. Carl and I are very proactive people. We like to think 3 steps ahead. We want to take all the scenarios of what ifs and you know, what direction can we do, what options do we have, what should we be thinking about. So get with your financial planners, get with your CPA, get with your insurance brokers and talk to them. If you have employees out of state, you need to be talking to your liability insurance carriers for the workers' comp considerations, because that's going to be coming up here at some point. Someone's liable to say, hey, I acquired the virus or I got sick because you kept me here at work, or that because I was required to be here. You need to be talking to your liability insurance that has the workers' comp clause and find out how they're going to be handling that. It's going to be a very difficult conversation with an employee who claims that, but you need to be prepared just in case and understand what your insurance carrier is going to expect from that.
You know, I could quickly weigh in on the comp piece too. Certainly we have a system in Ohio, of course, where, you know, the key question in any workers' comp claim is, was it work related? And to some extent, it's the burden on the injured worker for most part, if it's a challenge or contested claim, to prove that. One of the challenges I think individuals would have in, you know, arguing that that they contracted the virus in the workplace, which would be, you're absolutely right, would be potentially a compensable claim. But, you know, unless there are, I can envision a lot of situations where, you know, there could be 100 other places where that virus could be contracted. There could be, and it may be very difficult to show exactly where it came from. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. It's a great point, Pandy. I think we may see some of those claims come, but I'll be very interested in seeing how the Industrial Commission, particularly in Ohio, deals with proving the proof of work-relatedness, the proof that the virus was contracted in the workplace. How do you prove that? You know, maybe in some cases you can, but I think that would be an uphill climb for a lot of claimants. We'll see, but it's a great question.
More confusion, I guess. Getting back to, I think it was Lisa who asked about the shared work question. I see your comment, Lisa, and what I'm going to guess is that's in regards to maybe the partial unemployment. If someone has their hours reduced, unemployment will make up the difference. So if you can say that your hours went from 40 to 20, you can claim unemployment for that, the balance of the 20. That's done online just like every other claim for unemployment. I was checking Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio. They were all still offering that last I checked, but I'm going to guess that that's what you're talking about. I don't think that's a bad idea. In fact, I've encouraged a number of my clients to do that. That way they can keep the individuals on their payroll. And then when April 2nd clicks through, and if eligibility matches for an employee to take advantage of the other two programs, then it's seamless. Because again, if you put them on unemployment now, prior to April 2nd, they are not eligible, will not, unless, as Carl said, you decide you want to hire them back and then keep them on your books for the duration of what is they're eligible for. But that's, again, that's a decision for you and the ownership of the company. Anything else that you think is vital that we should discuss yet? I just do want to mention there is going to be a posting that's coming. So if anyone's interested in acquiring that, please get a hold of Carl and I. One of us will be more than happy to send that out. If one of you or any of you are interested in that document that we've created in regards to the request for the extension of FMLA under these particular circumstances, since there is no formal documentation, we'll have one for you. So all you have to do is just partner with one of us and we'll send that over. You know, this is a time when we need to partner together. There is no bad question. There is absolutely no bad question. And Carl and I are constantly getting back and forth with each other and saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What have I not thought of, or what have I not considered, or how are you interpreting this, and how should I interpret that? So we expect you guys to do the exact same thing. We want to thank ICRC-TV for giving us this ability. We're hoping to do this a couple more times as all these changes keep taking place, and as we get more feedback from our clients as to things that might be of a general concern for everyone.
Thank you, Pandy. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you.